Hello and welcome to Critical Hit. I'm David Linz and I love video games even when I hate them. In this first sneak peek Mega Super Ultra episode, I'm going to talk about the demo for Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 and describe in exquisite detail the taste that it left in my mouth. So put aside your weak human side and join me in remaking this world. That didn't make sense, but it didn't have to. It's a reference, you see. When I look back on when I was just getting into games as a kid, one of the first games that my mind goes to is Castlevania. Since then, I've seen the series evolve from a super difficult platformer to an explorative RPG game. The side-scrolling aspect was always there, but sometimes the series decided to experiment with 3D environments. Now, 3D Castlevania games have always sucked. They're so bad that almost nobody expected Lords of Shadow to be the hit that it was when it released in 2010. Now, I'd argue that it was mediocre at best, you will find that I am quite picky, but I'd say that it was good enough that Mercury Steam earned a second chance. And that second chance is, of course, Lords of Shadow 2. This game decides to put a new twist on the series. You get to play as Dracula, like the villain. The guy you've whipped, stabbed, and beaten for 3 decades is now the star of the show. This alone had me pumped for this game. I mean, Drax got some neat powers. He can teleport, shoot fire from a cape, and who doesn't want to shoot fire from a cape? Don't kid yourself, that sounds awesome. And he can even turn into a goddamn dragon demon thing if he wants to. In fact, Dracula in this game refers to himself as Dracul a lot, and Gabriel, the guy from the first game that becomes Dracula, spoiler alert, sorry, was referred to as the Dragon. This is a cool little nod to the actual Dracula mythos because his name translates roughly to the Dragon. It's also a nice bit of foreshadowing that I think many of us miss, so, you know, credit where credit is due, that's pretty cool. The demo starts off with a simple tutorial. I'd like to point out really quick that I love when games tell you how to move your character. Like, is that seriously necessary? Games are really complex now, sure, but does anyone really sit there and think, how do I move? I mean, there's this left stick here that controls movement in every single 3D video game I've ever played, but, I don't know, man. Oh, man, I don't know. What do I do? Anyway, you learn to move and then you learn to control the camera. And thank God you can control the camera in this game, since whoever directs it otherwise is really bad at their job. This game's camera sucks, but it's a demo, so whatever, maybe they'll fix that later. So let's get to the real meat of the game, the combat. Not Gabriel still has his signature whip, only now it's made out of fire and it comes from his hand, but it still feels about the same. Whip a single dude for nominal damage, or whip many dudes for less damage. You have 2 other weapons that can be switched out on the fly. Pressing L1 equips the Void Sword, which does piss poor damage, but heals you when you use it. R1 equips, the Flaming Fists of Death that you see in pretty much every action game ever made, I don't know. These are your heavy, slow, but damaging attacks that can tear through shields and armor. You know, standard stuff. Kind of mix that in a little pot and you got yourself a combat system. And the combat actually feels pretty good, too. Everything is fast-paced and exciting, and enemies are easy to deal with but can swarm you if you're not careful. The defensive maneuvers are pretty slick, too. Dracula's dodge move is a nice-looking dash that's ripped straight out of Symphony of the Night. Some attacks must be dodged, but many can be blocked, and if timed right, you'll get to dish out a nice little counterattack. But here's where the problems start to rise. See, Dracula is a vampire. Shocker, I know, but, this means that he can drink blood, and indeed even opens up conversation with his lovely guests by stating that he was hungry as fuck, and man was he glad that they decided to attack his castle today. So when you stun an enemy or knock their health low enough, you can finish them off by drinking their blood and regaining a bit of health. This is an interesting mechanic, and I'd be a huge fan of it if, you know, the Void Sword didn't already exist. The Void Sword allows you to regenerate quite a lot of health really quickly, so this mechanic is just useless. Throughout the demo, there was never a point where, at low health, drinking an enemy's blood was more favorable than just switching to the Void Sword. These kind of design choices worry me a little, because it shows that the developers couldn't really focus on just a simple, single mechanic. They decided to go with both because fuck it, why not? Why not? Are you kidding me? I'm gonna tell you why not. A well-designed game comes with only enough features that allow the player to succeed. Giving us more than that is just sloppy. It's cool that Dracula can suck blood to regain health, but why not make that his primary method of doing so? The Void Sword is overpowered as it is, why not just replace it with something else? I mean, do they really need to stick with the good and evil weapon system from the first game? Shit, Ninja Theory's DMC does something similar and it does it infinitely better, and that game sucks. Then there's the jumping puzzles. Now, Dracula is a nimble dude, but he still needs to jump to get around. This involves Uncharted-style platforming where you must scale huge walls, searching for handholds, etc. This jumping works well enough for the most part, but Dracula is still a bit iffy on when he'll decide to listen to your input. There's a point where you need to climb up this giant golem and he has these gears and such rotating around that can crush you, so you need to time your jumps and move quickly. 2 times out of 5 I would just jump to one of these areas and press up and jump to get out of the way, and Dracula would just sit there. Fuck you, Dracula would say. I am the Prince of Darkness. This is my vengeance. I'll move when I'm done, and then he'd respawn at the last checkpoint with a sliver of health gone. At least they don't punish you too much for failing their horrible jumping puzzles. Then there's the cringeworthy writing. The overall plot is kinda cool, I guess, but the game loves to remind us that it's a Castlevania game in the most painful ways imaginable. "What is a man?" Dracula asks as he steps outside to see hordes of soldiers attacking his castle. "But a miserable pile of secrets." This is a quote from Symphony of the Night, a game that is renowned for having the most hilarious voice acting in history. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for cute little nods like this, but why is this line here? What does Dracula even mean? It's just so out of place that it actually hurts anyone who's a fan of the series, and anyone who isn't is just left scratching their heads wondering what the fuck. The entire demo is full of this. "Die, monster, you don't belong in this world," shouts a paladin as he moves in to fight you. It's almost as if the game is so little like any of its predecessors that if they didn't keep reminding us, we'd forget we were playing Castlevania in the first place. So, final thoughts. Overall, the combat system is a bit of an improvement over the first game, but I'm still not sold on it. The demo was supposed to impress me enough to want the game, and on that front I'd say it definitely failed. There are a lot of good ideas here, but that's the problem. Too many good ideas can, when smashed together, be a terrible one. But what did you think of the demo? Seriously, don't just take some random chocolate fuck on the internet's word for it. I want to hear your thoughts too. So leave us a comment and be sure to subscribe for more in the future. I plan on revisiting Lords of Shadow 2 for a full-fledged review. Check back for that if you're so inclined. Anyway, later, duders.